Well, have you been paying attention to what's happening in Europe with energy crisis and protests and climate lockdowns? Well, if you live in the United States, that's coming soon to a theater near you because the United States is facing an energy crisis of its own, ill-timed, just a few days before the election. This comes straight out of the mouth of the White House economic team, and yet the mainstream media is pretty much ignoring the story because they don't want it to hurt the Biden administration and Democrats in the upcoming weeks. So the White House economic advisor, Brian Diaz, says we are facing a diesel shortage. Epic Times did cover this story. Here's the headline. It says, the U.S. only has 25 days of diesel supply. Shortage could cripple economy. Now, recall that there will be less fuel in circulation starting November 1st because that's what OPEC Plus voted on. So energy is hard to come by these days. You can't just turn on the tap and it comes. The whole global supply chain.
Actually, you could turn on the tap and it would come if you would allow it to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't shut down a Keystone pipeline and allow drilling to take place and actually not sanction Russia. You could turn. Oh, and also don't blow up the tap, like in the case of Nord Stream.
Yeah, all of those things. Yeah, you're right. You could do that if you were playing sanely,
right,
with the plumbing, but they're not, right? So here's a shot out of that article. It says the country is down to 25 days of diesel supply with stockpiles at their lowest level for this time of year in records going back to 1993. In the Northeast, where more people burn fuel for home heating than anywhere else in the country, also use a lot of fossil fuels for cooking. Inventories are a third of their typical levels going into winter. National Economic Council Director Brian Deese called the levels unacceptably low. By late October, diesel prices had risen for more than 2 weeks to 50% above where they were a year ago.
Oh, those prices are cheap. 50% more for diesel?
Yes.
Holy smokes.
Now, most of your transport of the things that you know and love, most of the things that you can just reach out and touch around your desk where you're sitting right now are shipped to you on trucks,
right,
most likely that run on diesel. So this means no more of that if things shut down, or at least much less of that. No gasoline transport of, delivery vehicles. No Amazon, no Walmart.
I got a question, though. That makes zero sense. You know why? Because it takes less to refine diesel than it does regular fuel. So how is that possible?
How is what possible? What part of that?
That
they don't
less.
have
That
enough?
there's going to be a shortage of it. It just seems like that is planned, because if it takes less resources to make diesel, it would be easier to make diesel, and in theory, it should be cheaper.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't have the crude, if you've shut down you've shut down drilling, you've hammered your ability to get access to the raw materials, you can't refine anything.
And
well, right,
you
but
hate
then how do they
everybody,
have
so you
regular gas,
sanction
though?
everywhere that you would get it.
Well, they're also
Because
having
if that were the
gas.
case, they'd be like, we're going to run out of all gas, period.
Well, we are running. I mean, we just had another announcement earlier this week. We didn't cover it on the show, but the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the Biden administration is rolling out more in time for the election because we don't have enough gasoline. I mean, that's why we're seeing, $4 a gallon. David, you're out in Alaska, right? What are you guys paying
Washington
for?
State.
What? So you're out in Fairbanks out there. What are you guys paying for gas out there right now? Do you know?
About $5.65, I think, was what I filled up last.
Wow.
$5.65.
Yeah, that was this morning.
Holy smokes. What about you guys in the chat? Let us know what part of the world you're in. What are you paying for petrol? What are you paying for gas right now? It's
But I don't know how my neighbor Sarah Palin, she gets it for like $3.50, and I have no idea how she's doing it. I think she's directly importing it from Russia. I think she has like a direct line.
Well, she can see Russia right from her front porch. So
I can't from my yard, even though it's my neighbor. But
you're so close there. So no Walmart, no Amazon packages, no food, no stores, no getting to work. Think about empty shelves, food supplies. Not getting to stores. Truckers that I was reviewing today were saying, we can't afford to do this. We're losing money. We cannot afford to do this. No coal to the electric companies, right? So, who do you think powers those electric cars? right? It comes from coal.
Yes. Yeah,
it comes from coal, and it comes from the transport. So you need to transport the coal to the electric company in order to make the power your electric vehicles.
And we spoke last week about how now the barge in the Mississippi River is the barges are not able to run because of low water levels. So 2,000 boats were stranded.
Wow.
That would otherwise deliver coal, which is needed for fuel in other regions. This diesel shortage, it focuses on the Northeast, but the rest of the country will also hurt for all of these things.
Yeah, no electric, no furnace, no heat for winter, no lights, etc. And by the way, New England already rationing heating even before peak winter. Bloomberg today writing fuel stockpiles in New England are a third of seasonal norms. Actually, it's from October 21st. High cost forces consumers to partially fill heating oil tanks, so they're not even filling them up. And costs have skyrocketed, all because the U.S. is sanctioning Russia. But don't worry, Biden says he's lowering energy costs today. Listen.
By bringing down the cost of everyday things they have to work their families through. It's not just food and energy, which is critical. We brought down the cost of energy.
Oh, you did? What planet are you living in?
No, because Jean-Pierre had said that recently. We're going to bring down the price of other things. And actually, they mentioned because Medicare premiums are going down, you'll have more room in your budget, by saving that $13 a month. Or whatever the premium is lowering. Although I did have a viewer write me that said Medicare premiums are going down, but not Part C and Part D, which is interesting. I think we should look into that. Thank you for that tip. But they really think that these little things over here will make up for the big price increases over here. Maybe that's how the federal budget, runs their books, but American families can't.
No, and Jean-Pierre speaking. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I looked at average prices of gasoline because I remember a time when diesel was always cheaper than gas, right?
Yeah,
and at some point it shifted. And looking back in the 80s, it was $1.25 for unleaded and 82 cents for diesel. And even in 2002, it was $1.56 for unleaded premium and 84 cents for diesel. Wow. So when was this switch to where diesel became so much more expensive than regular gas?
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, because if you look at for a barrel of crude oil, we talked about crude a minute ago, right? A barrel of crude oil and according to the data from the EIA.gov, U.S. petroleum refineries produce an average of 11 to 12 gallons of diesel fuel from each 42-gallon barrel of crude oil.
Frosty Youth says $9 a gallon for diesel in California.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow. So I'm looking at this chart that says it's 2004 is when it happened. Unleaded was $1.90 and diesel went up to $1.24. So that's where it started to flip. So what happened then?
In what year?
2004, he said.
2004. That's interesting. I don't know. Nothing stands
2004,
out to me.
2005, sorry.
Nothing stands out to me. The cost, I mean, other than, of course, we were at war. We were at war in Afghanistan and Iraq. So maybe it was the amount of fuel being consumed by our military and the refining capacity in Iraq that, oil fields on fire. Maybe that was it. I don't know. That's just the only date that kind of stands out in my brain. But
I moved to Portland in 2004, but I don't think that had anything to do with it.
Probably not, but you might. You never know.
Maybe.
So
I don't know. Did you have a diesel car?
I did not.
No.
We
had one.
Pickup.
Which one of our cars was diesel? The
Tiguan? One of them, yeah. I don't know. I forget. So all of these lies, so you mentioned Jean-Pierre, and so she was on the podium today, and all of these lies that the Biden administration continues to spin around energy costs is just amazing. Watch.
The president will continue to do everything he can to lower prices.
So that's a little short here. He's going to do everything he can to continue to lower prices, even though they're going up. So you mean like going to Saudi Arabia and fist bumping the Saudi prince? Like that really helped because now OPEC is.
Well, she was just saying a couple of weeks ago how gas was going down faster than it ever has in world history.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. It's amazing what their short memory. So these reporters have basically had enough of all of this. Watch this on the same question.
Today, the president seemed to be countering some of this GOP messaging on the economy, and he told people that Republicans like to call Democrats big spenders, and people should look at the facts. But the facts don't seem to be exactly how he's painting it on some of these issues. He has claimed repeatedly that the administration reduced the deficit, but if you break it down, spending was high because of the pandemic, those programs expired, and that brought down the deficit, and then that deficit reduction was spent on canceling student loans. And then on the jobs claims that he made, he said that President Trump was the first since Hoover to lose jobs during his administration, but and he claimed that he had created 10 million new jobs, but in reality, those jobs have mostly been added back, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics says only about 514,000 jobs have been newly created. So how are people supposed to take this kind of messaging on their most important issue seriously when some of this feels like smoke and mirrors?
Well, let me tell you what the American people should take very, very seriously. Let me remind you of the Trump tax cut of 2017, $2 trillion that was not paid for, not paid for. So I want to be very clear about that.
Okay. So this is the messaging they're coming out with now over the past 24 hours. I've seen this from a couple of Democrats. Oh, it's the Trump tax cuts. That's the reason we're in. So it was first it was the pandemic, then it was Putin's price hike, and now it's Trump's tax cuts. That's why we're facing these higher gas prices.
I don't know, but that reporter nailed it on all of the sort of smoke and mirrors to her point, or just like she laid out the math points that they are giving and said, yes, these are spun to look a certain way, but when you peel back the math, it's pretty easy to see it's not progress, right?
No.
So the question itself, there was nothing she could have said to answer that because that reporter nailed it.
Well, when Nancy Pelosi this weekend was asked about inflation, Nancy Pelosi, I think, probably has the best answer on inflation right now. What are we going to do? Here's her answer.
And the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon. Yeah. The EU, the European Union, the UK, the British have a higher inflation rate than we do here. It's not, the fight is not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
Oh okay.
And the fact is
so we need to change the subject. So when someone brings up inflation, you just need to change the subject. That's what we need to do.
That's
she is
helpful,
right.
thanks.
She is right that it's higher in Europe. Well, I mean, it's going to.
I love that. Oh, sorry. We have to change the subject because it's global. But like, if you talk about like climate change, does that mean that they have to change the subject because it's a global phenomenon? Like anything that's a global phenomenon, we now can't talk about.
Right.
Like, what the hell is that?
Because it's worse over there, so we should feel better about how bad it is here. Like, it's not as bad as what it is in Latvia right now, and Estonia, 20%.
Even though economic models predicted based on certain actions that your party has taken that we would get here. Right. I mean, it doesn't take a genius. President Trump, on the day he left office, said, have fun with those $7 gallon gas prices. Bye, right? And so economic models have been telling us we would get here. Okay. And you take no responsibility.
Well, and no mention of that this all being our influence. Like a lot of what's going on over there is our fault. But still.
Oh, no. Ignore all of that. Just change the subject.
Well, we're leaders when we want to be.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon, whatever she said. Phenomena.
It's a funk phenomenon.